Utah fans, we've been waiting a very long time to finally say it, but game week is finally here, and that means we finally get our first look at the depth chart. There are a number of surprises that we have to talk about. Also, on today's show, going to be going over who I think are going to be the breakout candidates during Utah's 2024 football season, and we have to talk about that special performance that Jerome Myles put up against IMG Academy last week. We got a lot to talk about on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we do greatly appreciate you everydayers. If you want to become an everydayer, you can like and subscribe to our show on YouTube. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts, and do enjoy interacting with you guys in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. And also today's show is brought to you by our friends at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, no spaces, to go inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today by once again downloading Ultimate College Football Head Coach and using that code LOCKEDONCFB. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department, and I am fired up for this Monday edition of Locked On Utes because it has been a very long time since it's been game week on this podcast, and for pretty much everyone except for the week 0 teams who had that last week, right? So we finally get some action this week. Yes, it's not going to be a great game, but I'm fired up to have football back. I'm sure all of you as well. Once again, appreciate all of you for joining me. And on today's show, we'll get to who I think are going to be the breakout players this fall. Drop your lists of breakout players below, as well as your depth chart surprises. And then at the end of the show, we're also got to talk about what Jerome Myles did last week. And there were even some Utah football players in attendance for that special performance, including his former teammate. Also, Hillman Kasuga, who Utah also has an offer out for, didn't look too shabby either in that game. So we'll talk about that at the end. But have to start with the depth chart. We finally got to look at it, and man, to say there were some surprises on this, in my opinion, would be an understatement. I was shocked by a number of things on this depth chart. I think no more so than DAndre Bentley being the tight end opposite Brant Kuithe as a starter. This is a Utah team that's going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. And as this depth chart says, and depth charts get thrown around all the time, right? I will never forget the first year I was hosting this show, Utah at Florida, Caleb Lomu running out, or excuse me, not Caleb Lomu, Sataulau Mea starting at right tackle. And we all thought he was going to be the right guard, and then Mokafisi was in at right guard. So this is where depth charts can always be a little crazy, and we'll see how it all takes shape. But based on this depth chart, and I don't think there's any reason to lie about Landon King, Carson Ryan being the 3rd and 4th tight ends, it is amazing for Dallin that he was able to beat out Landon and Carson. Those of you who watched the show during the offseason, I literally just a few weeks ago had Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus on to argue about how good I thought this Utah tight end room was. I was saying they were the best of the nation, just bringing up guys like Brant Kuithe, Landon King, as well as Carson Ryan. I didn't even need to get to DAndre Bentley because I thought he's solid, but he's not going to play. He's not better than those other guys. Well, this is why you put the pads on and let it all play out on the field, because Bentley was able to earn the backup job, and hats off to him. So excited for this opportunity. This is a guy who transferred to Utah from Snow Canyon. He was really good there. NJCAA All-American second team when he was there in 22. He had 114 yards on 8 catches and 2 touchdowns that season. He caught his first pass as a Ute for 5 yards against Northwestern in the Las Vegas Bowl, and that's the only real action he saw last year. So listed as a junior, but awesome for him that he's in there. And I will say the one thing I also think he has an opportunity to see a lot of time for, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was Utah's best blocking tight end, right? Brant's a smaller tight end. Landon's a smaller tight end. Carson Ryan's pretty solid size-wise too, but I just can't. I think he's a fine blocker, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's what set DAndre Bentley apart from the other times. He's a good pass catcher, and look, we've seen a couple of highlights from practice, so he also is a really strong pass-catching tight end, but He is obviously an elite and tenacious blocker as well. And we know how much this Utah team wants to run the ball. So hats off to him. And this tight end room is fantastic. I still think we're going to see a lot of Carson Ryan and Landon King. And there's just, I mean, the coaches have said it, right? There's a lot of mouths that they have to feed to get the ball. So definitely biggest shocker for me was DAndre Bentley at tight end 2. Also, I thought was interesting. I don't think I'd go as shocking, but just for another interesting thing on the offense, because we knew what the offensive line was going to be. That was discussed by Josh Furlong and Steve Bartle. Both of them had those in stories recently of KSL.com and KSL Sports, respectively. We knew what the quarterback was going to be. Running back isn't that surprising. It was, if you asked me back after spring ball, like who the top 3 backs were going to be once we knew about Anthony Wood's situation, I would have said Mekhi Bernard, Jalen Glover, Mike Mitchell. That's what it ended up being. But wide receiver, a little bit of interesting shuffling there. You get Dorian Singer, it's Money Parks, and it's actually Micah Pittman with Alford listed as the backup to Dorian Singer. So I do think that is very interesting. I should say Darden Zipper has the after Damian Alford. So maybe we'll get to see some of Zipper this fall as well. And they have the different distinctions, right? The X receiver, the Z receiver, and the R receiver. R receiver, mostly the slot guy. So good for Micah Pittman having the opportunity to get in there. He's a guy who missed a lot, pretty much the whole season last year. I think if I remember correctly, got hurt during the Baylor game. So fired up that he gets an opportunity. That was a big addition from Utah, first at Oregon, then to Florida State. And he has that connection with Cam Rising growing up with him playing football. So I'm excited for him to get an opportunity. I think he is going to be a nice mismatch opportunity in the slot for Utah. Congrats to Money Parks for winning out on the Z wide receiver spot. Z is more your traditional deep threat, and we know how he started last season and has also had several memorable big plays and big catches before. So love that he's getting the opportunity there. I also expect to see, I know that what the backup says, like X, Z, R, I think we're going to see Damian Alford lining up as the Z receiver a lot on the outside because he is 6'6", 210 pounds and those long strides. And he averaged 19 yards per catch last year for Syracuse. He's not going to be kept off the field for sure. So, and we knew Singer would be the top receiver, right? But I did think it was interesting that Alford is the 4th right now, even though the reason that I believe on the depth chart you see Dorian Singer as the backup slot guy to Micah Pittman is I think in a lot of those 3rd and long situations, you very well might see Singer in on the slot, Alford, and then you get Money Parks in there. So you get your 3 biggest targets who are also like your 3 biggest / best guys at bringing in deep passes on the field. So those were where the offensive surprises were. How about for the rest of the surprises? The defensive ones were jarring to say the least with the position changes. That absolutely shocked me again. Jonathan Hall is a guy I thought was going to be in the mix to start at safety, and instead they ended up moving him over to linebacker. Now, what I really like about this move is he is a fantastic tackler and is a physical safety. So he's going to do very well at linebacker. Also, what have I talked about? I do not love the linebacker depth. Feel great about Lander Barton. Feel great about Karene Reed. Sione Fotu, I think he'll be better this year. He had his struggles at time last year, right? He was the 4th linebacker behind Leavani Dumuni for a reason, was just coming back off his mission. So there was still a lot to adapt to and get ready for him. So I think he'll be better this year, but I know Jonathan Hall, he thrived playing in the box in the Las Vegas Bowl. He did a good job at safety in that game too. So I wouldn't be surprised if he still played a little bit of safety, but probably not too much, right? How about Alakai Gilman winning the strong safety starting spot? That was hats off to him for doing that. I thought he was a guy who would be kind of get the or designation with Jonathan Hall, but Gilman's a big get from Stanford for this team. So I think he's got a chance to do some big things this fall. Teo Johnson or Nate Ritchie, you know, we're still going to see Nate Ritchie on this field a lot, even though I do think Teo Johnson, the coaches said he's for sure a starter. Back at spring ball, they said Teo would be a starter, and sounded based on what they were saying, sounds like he's the best safety. So we knew he would factor in out there. Also interesting to see if you're just looking at the defensive end room, right? Logan Fano or Van Fillinger. I like that because I think Van's going to start a lot of the games because I think Van and Connor O'Toole are the best 2 run stopping defensive ends, but Logan Fano might straight up be the best pass rusher on this team. So he's always going to be on the field on 3rd downs. And the last like massive, I think, like position depth chart thing is the fact that you get a guy in, I just blanked out, John Randall. The fact that John Randall all of a sudden moved to cornerback, I didn't hear anything about that. That was absolutely shocking once to see as well. But he's a guy where, look, it does seem like that's going to be a really good fit for him, right? 6 foot, 182 pounds. That's much more cornerback weight than it is running back weight too. So hats off to him for embracing the change. Good for him for already landing on the depth chart too. You know, it's interesting always to see who's absent from the depth chart, right? No Munir McClain and no CJ Blocker. So are there injuries there? Are they just genuinely not one of like good enough to be on the depth chart right now. That like blocker, we don't know because we haven't seen enough of. Munir McLean is one where I'm like, he did enough last year. I feel like he should be on here, but we don't get to see fall camp. So we don't know how that played out, but nice for Randall to already be acclimating to his new position enough that he's on the depth chart, and would love to see him get some opportunities. We know he's got the speed from being a 4-star running back, so excited to see him on the field if he does get that opportunity. Those were the biggest shockers for the depth chart. Also, I did not yet have, obviously, Rashawn Glover as the guy who would end up being this team's punt returner, but Glover's a guy who did it very well recently. When you look at what he did, where he played his football at Trinity Valley Community College from 22 to 23, playing in 18 games during that span. Thank you, Utah Athletics website. He had 8 kick returns for 115 yards and averaged 14.4 yards per return. So he does excel as a return man, and I'm excited to see him get an opportunity. It's been too long since we had a punt or kickoff returned for a touchdown. We miss you, Britton Covey, but I'm excited to see Glover step in and try to fill that role too. And I have to specify, that's right, Rashawn Glover, because of course we also have Jaden Glover on this roster too. So lots of Glovers now to handle out. So great to see the depth chart. Definitely some surprises. Always curious to see how this changes and evolves over the season, because this will definitely not stay the same, even probably by next week. So I'm looking forward to seeing it all get underway Thursday. And speaking of it getting underway Thursday, we're going to get our first look at this Utah football team. So what does that mean? Got to talk about who I believe are going to be some of the breakout candidates for this Utah squad. That's what we are going to be discussing on Locked On Utes in one moment. But first, I want to talk with you all a little bit more about our friends at Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Hey, Locked On Utes fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step in the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of Utah football? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling school scholarships, you control every critical detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling offensive plays during the games. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we do have a special offer. So with Locked On Utes, you can use the promo code Locked On CFB, all caps, no spaces, Locked On CFB, to go inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com, ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. All righty, coming back into this one, want to talk with you all about another exciting thing we have at the Locked On Network, and that is our college football season previews. The Locked On College Football 24/7 channel is also live, and it's playing this 4-part series, which covers each of the 4 major conferences with discussions on the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, and teams have a shot of making the college football expanded playoffs. So we have that covered for the Big 12. I wasn't able to make it on it just based on some scheduling timing, but they do a great job laying it out. Or if you want to learn about the other conferences, make sure you check it out. It's streaming on Locked On College 24/7's YouTube channel or on the Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All righty, we got to talk about breakout candidates. It's that time of the year. This is something I love doing each year, is looking at this Utah roster and going, okay, who are going to be the guys that surprise us and make a name for themselves, become some of the best players on this team? Cough, cough, last year, Jonah Ellis. He was the second best defensive end in the country from a sack perspective, really, till his injury, only behind Leia Latu, who UCLA had. So Ellis was fantastic. And it's a huge loss for this Utah team as well. Sione Vaki was another one. Obviously, he broke out for reasons we didn't exactly expect as a running back, but based on how he looked at the Pac-12 championship game, you knew that. And I think in the Rose Bowl, if I remember correctly, got a good run in there as well. You knew that he was going to be a major part of Utah's plans, and he crushed it last year too. So who are the breakout candidates this year? I think my number one breakout candidate has to be Connor O'Toole. If we go back to last offseason or last fall camp, Kyle Whittingham was talking about a pass rusher that he said was going to be the best on this team. And he did not say Jonah Ellis. He said Connor O'Toole. When you look at O'Toole, this is a guy who started his career as a tight end. He caught the big 2-point conversion Cam Rising had to force overtime against San Diego State. Utah lost that game, but that's where he was at. He was at a tight end. But now, switched over to defensive end back in 22, grew so much over the course of that season. He had 1.5 sacks and also 4 tackles for loss overall that season. Then you look at last year, he played the final 8 games, but had an injury to start the year. So that slowed him down. 6 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And he missed 4 games, like I said, too. So I think with a full season sample size, another offseason working as a pass rusher, I think he's going to explode this season. I'm not saying he will be Jonah Ellis, but I am willing to say I think he will have double-digit sacks. I think he will get to 10 sacks. And it's going to be Sack Lake City again this year. Logan Fano is an honorable mention I have. I could absolutely see him leading this team in sacks. And he really started to come on right as he got hurt last year against Oregon State. So he's a guy that I could also see leading this team in sacks. Van Fillinger, I saw one of the coaches recently, as well as I think Van, talk about how he was playing through injuries last year because he knew this team needed him to be out there and healthy. If Van can stay healthy, we've seen how dangerous he can be going back to the 2021 Pac-12 championship team. So there are a number of guys, and that's not even factoring the defensive tackles, the Keanu Tanavasa, who was the definition of a surprise breakout player, because we all knew Jonah Ellis would play and be good. Well, I wasn't talking about Tanavasa last season. I was talking about Aliki Vaimahi, Samote Pepa, all guys who, of course, contributed, but not to the level Tanuvasa ended up contributing. But to me, O'Toole, he has the arm length. He has the pass rush moves in his repertoire. He spent another offseason training and getting more acclimated to the defensive end position. It's now the 3rd year he's been playing defensive end. I think he's going to lead this team in sacks. The mayor of Sack Lake City will be Connor O'Toole, and he is my number 1 pick for a breakout player this fall. And Connor O'Toole just barely edged out this next guy. He had an opportunity last year, and he was really good. But this year feels like it's going to be different for Teo Johnson. You look at what he did last year, played at safety and a little bit of nickelback, right? Logged 33 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, was second on the team, 5 pass breakups. That's important. Also had 7 third down stops, which are very impressive. And he's a guy that he switched from receiver to cornerback last year, and now he's going to be a safety. And I think he's going to have a monster season. I think he is going to be the next Utah defensive back who goes on. And I do think he's going to be a top 3-round pick in the NFL draft. I think when you look at his speed, length, the intangibles that he possesses, the quick footwork, he's going to be special. And there's a reason I'm also really high on him, is because Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shaw were bragging about him. And because of the players that those guys have coached, I don't take their words lightly when they say this guy's special. The fact that he was the first one of this safety group that included Nate Ritchie, Jonathan Hall, Alakai Gilman, all guys who had been playing safety for a while, right? The fact that he was the first one to be like, no, he's for sure a starter, that spoke volumes to me. So I do think that Johnson's in for a monster season too. I think he's going to be the leader of this Utah safety room. I think he'll emerge as Amaya Vaughn might be the defensive back leaders overall, but I think Johnson in for a big season. I think he's going to get a couple interceptions this year. I think we'll be making big plays several times on third down. That third down stop number was 7 last year. I think that number will rise to 10 this year. Like I said, a couple interceptions. He probably won't lead this team in pass breakups. I think Zamaya Vaughn will, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was second on the team. And there was a couple years ago where Clark Phillips didn't lead the team pass breakups his last year. I think Zamaya Vaughn actually did with 9 back in 22. So just because you're the best cornerback doesn't mean you always lead him in pass breakups. But I think Johnson can do it all, can cover a little bit too, of course, if Utah needs him to. So he's another guy that I would absolutely have as a breakout candidate. And for my last breakout candidate pick, there are a number of guys. Let's do the honorable mentions first. I think both Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano. Some of you might say Spencer Fano started last year. I think he's going to become an elite offensive tackle in college football this year. He was a freshman All-American. He was solid as he was really good for a freshman. I do not think he was one of the best offensive linemen in college football last fall, but I absolutely think that he is going to be considered exactly that after the conclusion of this season. So I'm excited for him. Caleb Lomu getting his first start at left tackle. That's a big spot that the coaches trust him in, right? So I think that definitely means something. I'm expecting big things out of him. How about Damian Alford with Landon King, both guys we discussed earlier. Logan Fano, another guy that we mentioned earlier, right? Then you get the Smith Snowdens of the world he was so good in that Las Vegas Bowl. I know he's going to have a number of big pass breakups, and he will be the guy next year that we're that we're most excited about in this defensive back room. I think this is the year he breaks out, though, he's obviously going to be a starter, as the depth chart says, but I think he's just going to be a guy that week in and week out is just shutting guys down in that nickel spot. And lastly, I'm going to go a Nate Ritchie resurgence. Obviously, he was really good in 2020. That's when he first broke out, right? But it wasn't until 2020. He didn't come back until last fall. Took some time to get his legs under him. I think we're going to see the old Nate Ritchie back this year. So those are the honorable mentions. And my final breakout candidate is Mike Mitchell. I think by the end of the season, he's going to be Utah's best running back. And I know Mekhi Bernard's really good, and that's a bold statement, but this is a guy who is a 4-star talent. We've heard about his buy-in, his work ethic, the physical transformation. He's gotten bigger. We've seen that. 6 foot, 211 pounds, right? This is the guy who's the number 16th ranked running back in the country when he committed to Utah. When he finished his high school career, he had over 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 900-yard games. He's explosive. He's tough. He's physical. And I think by the end of the season, he's very well could be this Utah team's best back. Or if Mekhi Bernard's still the one that's trusted the most, I think he's going to be the guy who is their best option running the ball on first and second down. And then on money play and a big drive, you're going to want to have Mekhi in because of experience. Totally get that. So those are all my breakout candidates. Let me know your guys in the comments below. And in the very near future, well, would Jerome Myles even be considered a breakout candidate? Because I think he's going to be pretty spectacular right away. If and when, hopefully, he comes to the University of Utah. And man, he put the nation on notice, just like Corner Canyon did. Biggest win in the history of probably Utah high school football. You guys can check me in the comments, if not easily, since I've been following Utah high school football. So have to discuss what Jerome Myles did against IMG Academy, some of the best defensive backs in the nation. We'll be diving into that in one moment. But first, we have to talk with you about 5-Hour Energy. After lunch, are you tired? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. You can let 5-Hour Energy be that shot that helps you lead you over the wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore: watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and there's pretty much a flavor for everyone. You can even try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack of 24. So you can choose and mix and match which flavors you like, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, not spelled out, so the number 5, and then hourenergy.com, you can get some 5-Hour Energy products today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, no spaces, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is valid only until September 30th on one of your orders, and it cannot be used with another promotion. So just one time, can't be used with another promotion. This code is not good on subscription orders also. You can go to 5hourenergy.com today and use that code LOCKEDONCFB to get some 5-Hour Energy sent your way. All righty, closing out this episode of Locked On Utes, we got to talk about Jerome Myles. Yes, we got Southern Utah coming up this week. There will be time to discuss that, but have to close the show with talking about Utah's hopefully a future Utah Ute in Jerome Myles, who was just spectacular, as was Corner Canyon. And Hillman Kasuga, I mentioned him earlier. He was incredible too. Myles, best receiver in the state of Utah, 5-star, maybe the best recruit to hopefully one day come to Utah. And Corner Canyon took on IMG Academy, one of the best teams in the country, and they got the win, 35-34. It was an incredible game. IMG Academy looked like early that they were just going to be too much. They were blowing Corner Canyon off the ball, but mistakes, all that it takes to open the door, and Corner Canyon capitalized on it. And Myles showed up. You know, he's the 30th best player in the country, so you thought he would, but I didn't expect 5 catches for 125 yards, and 3 of those touchdowns ended with him crossing the goal line or just in the end zone already, like he did on his spectacular one-handed catch on his helmet. He was spectacular. And I love that Isaac Wilson and Dorian Singer were right by to see him take that in too. So, it was special. Myles was just so dynamic. The size, the speed, the route running. He can win at every level of the field. He can make defenders miss after the catch. And IMG Academy has some of the best players in the country once again. So it's not like he was doing it against absolute no names. So loved watching Jerome Myles go to work. And actually was able to watch the game. It was broadcast on Flow Sports, so it was fun to go through and watch. And I'll say it again too, like Hillman Kasuga looks so good. I would love it if Jerome Myles came to Utah and played with Isaac Wilson for 2 years. Let's say in this hypothetical, Isaac Wilson's awesome and just goes off to the draft right away. And then Helaman Kasuga followed him up. And if Wyatt Becker comes in and crushes it too, that's awesome. But I'm just saying it'd be crazy if it was Wilson to Kasuga with Jerome Myles there, because what is that? That's all that Corner Canyon connection. And the big thing too, just yes, Myles was spectacular. Myles was awesome. That was the biggest takeaway from a Utah football perspective, right? But from a Utah football as in the state of Utah, this is a massive win. When you say best high school football programs in the country, right? IMG Academy is top 5 I would go top 5. If nothing else, they're top 10 year in and year out with the Bishop Gormans and Allen, Texas, and all those other ones that they have out there. For the state of Utah to be able to get this win is massive. It's another reminder of how good the in-state talent is in Utah. Part of the reason that Utah is winning these Pac-12 championships and they're favored to win the Big 12 is because they've recruited the best players in the state of Utah, brought them in, and helped them maximize their talents. Utah high school football has been a sleeping giant for a while, and maybe not even sleeping. They've been really good, just overlooked so often. And this is the game that really put the nation on notice, right? Corner got beat pretty handily by Bishop Gorman last year. And this is the year where Corner Canyon was able to get IMG Academy in the state and send them out with an L. Loved watching the Chargers go to work. Hats off to Eric Kerr and his staff. And every time I watch Jerome Myles play, I'm just hoping that man's a U one day because he is elite. Loved watching Myles go to work and excited to continue to see what he does too. Loved watching Utah high school football get elevated and love watching Jerome Myles go to work too. So positive sign for Utah recruiting, although you could argue it's not because more schools may take notice, but he already named his top 5. So there's nothing that's going to change too much with that, right? So love seeing that from Myles. Love getting the depth chart and love talking about who the best breakout star is going to be on this Utah football roster with you all. Once again, drop in the comments below. What depth chart surprises, the breakout players? How about Jerome Myles? Some of you were already commenting about that last week. I know I didn't get a chance to talk about it until right now. So I had to gush and join in on the conversation myself. And speaking of joining in on the conversation, we got season predictions coming up. I haven't sat down and given my final record prediction. Those of you listen at various points throughout the podcast can probably guess what this is over the summer, but got to talk about that. Some stats for Cam Rising. Is he going to end up in New York City? Yogi Roth said so. He's pretty smart. I might end up siding with him. So we'll have lots of fun guests on this week. It's going to be so much fun. We got Utah football back. Can't wait for this season to get underway. Just have 3 more days till it is officially back. Utah football. We are so close. Hang in there, everyone. Please keep checking out the show each and every day. Locked On College Football as you covered for a second listen. That's going to do it for our show today. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about throughout this week as well, too, or just see me cover going forward. Love interacting with you all in the comments once again. That's going to do it for our first game week edition of Locked On Utes in 2024. That feels good to say, and can't wait to come back and talk more with you about this Utah football team tomorrow. Have a great Monday, everyone.